I'll go tally the votes. Once the votes are read, the decision is final. The MacBook will be asked to leave the lineup immediately. I'll read the votes. First vote, M1 Air. Next vote, Touch Bar M2 MacBook Pro. Again, Touch Bar M2 MacBook Pro. M1 MacBook Air again. That's 2 votes MacBook Air, 2 votes MacBook Pro. 13-inch MacBook Pro, that's the M2. 3 votes 13-inch MacBook Pro, 2 votes M1 Air. That's 3 votes M1 MacBook Air, 3 votes 13-inch MacBook Pro, 1 vote left. And our last tie-breaking vote, 13-inch M1 MacBook Air. You gotta bring me your AirPods. M1, the lineup is spoken. It's time for you to go. Good luck, guys. Well, you guys have a very important decision ahead of you. How to price the lower-end MacBook Airs may make or break this lineup. Head back to camp, get some sleep. So, with the introduction of the 15-inch MacBook Air, which could possibly happen any week now, as Apple's just kind of decided not to have a spring event and are dropping yellow iPhones on us, that means that the MacBook lineup is about to get really, really confusing, and 9to5Mac is dogpiling even more so on top of this, because if you consider just adding the 15-inch MacBook Air would mean 3 different MacBook Airs in the lineup, plus the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the 2 other real, better MacBook Pros, let's be honest. But 9to5Mac's exclusive report says they also have an M3 chip ready for the Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pro. Now, their report was kind of intentionally vague, I feel. They didn't say if there would be any design changes on this 13-inch MacBook Pro. In my head, I could imagine Apple wanting to ditch that OLED supplier for the MacBooks because that's such a weird, very precise display. You know, the function key long touch bar. And clearly, they don't see much of a future in it, but maybe they just bought a bunch of these OLED panels and they're just trying to chew through the supplies they have of them. That's why they decided to refresh the 13-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 chip. 9to5Mac saying they're going to refresh it again with the M3 and that they considered dropping the Pro naming of it altogether and just calling that one the MacBook. And that's probably the point in the video where all of you are going, yes, 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 just stop calling it a Pro. It's okay to have something in between the Air and the Pro that's a little bit better than the Air but not as good as a Pro. And I agree with you, for the record. I think that naming would make a lot more sense, or even calling it the MacBook SE, because all that MacBook has really been for the past 3 years is newer chip, old design, and they just keep recycling that old design over and over and over again, so that kind of lives up to the SE terminology. But according to 9to5Mac, Apple scrapped that idea because they realized that by keeping the Pro in the name, you convince a lot of not real pros who think they're pros to spend more money on the laptop, which I defended way back when the M1 MacBook Pro came out, which a lot of people bought and still have. I still think it's not that much better than the M1 MacBook Air, and I'm a Touch Bar fan. I just think we all need to get over it because its time is definitely limited, although I feel dumber and dumber the more I say that, because ever since they scrapped the Touch Bar on the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, I was sure that it was just a matter of time before they scrapped it from the 13-inch, and here we are again, and it's like, oh, actually it might make it another year. I don't think it should, to be honest. It's just kind of weird in the lineup, but I guess it's nice for those of you who just don't give up hope and always want to have a better and better MacBook that has the same ports as before, same keyboard, same touch bar, same display as before. It just happens to make the switch to the 3nm architecture thanks to the M3 chip. So the way I see it is, if they are refreshing and keeping that Touch Bar MacBook Pro and they're introducing a 15-inch M3 MacBook Air, I feel like they really got to rethink this lineup before it gets so overwhelmingly complicated. And the most likely scenario in my head, as much as I don't want it to be the case, is them discontinuing the M1 MacBook Air. I still think out of all the MacBooks in the lineup, that's probably the best value, but even I have to admit, if you were in the market for for a new MacBook and you didn't need to have the new M2 design, you didn't care about MagSafe or having the new midnight color or having ProMotion or anything, yeah, I would still recommend people buy the M1 MacBook Air, but I wouldn't recommend you buy it new. I would say buy it refurbished or buy it secondhand, and you can find them for way cheaper, because honestly, this MacBook is over 2 years old now, which is weird because I feel like it was just yesterday when it first came out, but that was the end of 2020. We're getting into the second quarter of 2023 now, and it sounds like there's new MacBooks going to be ready in a couple months, so my thought process is M1 MacBook Air, as great as it is, I think it just makes more sense to continue recommending that for the secondhand market, but in regards to buying new MacBooks, the inventory levels have got to be fairly low for that one, or the people buying it are not that common. So that way we discontinue the old Johnny Ive era wedge design of the MacBook Air, and now the entry level would be the M2, or in this case, the M3 MacBook Air, which will basically look the same as the M2, just with a newer chip and better battery life. Hopefully better thermals as well, thanks to that 3nm architecture. And then I think the lineup for MacBooks will be somewhat design consistent. You know, you'll have your two ultra-thin, very portable MacBook Airs in two different sizes, and you'll have two very powerful, very capable MacBook Pros with ProMotion and more legacy ports. And then right there in the middle, you've got the recycled design, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which is there to make the MacBook Pro lineup seem cheaper than it is by saying, hey, it starts at $1,300. But honestly, I still find that a little bit weird in the lineup to be like, if you want the touch bar, you buy this middle grade one, but you don't get it on anything else. I think what honestly would be a little bit cooler, because I'm not visualizing them lowering the price of the M3 MacBook Airs. They're gonna probably have better performance, better battery life, so they will very much likely keep the price the same. But if they scrapped the touch bar, I know it's hard, so many of you love it, but if they scrapped it on that 13-inch MacBook Pro, but kept everything else about it with the M3 chip, still has the traditional keyboard, but now it just has function keys from the same suppliers you're using to build the M1 MacBook Air, I guess. Now that it doesn't have that big expensive OLED panel in there, if you sell that for $1,000, lower the price substantially, which if you remember, back when Apple offered function key versions and touch bar versions, there was usually like a $300 price difference between those two. So I'm suggesting, you know, have a MacBook regular or MacBook SE that starts at $1,000 that undercuts both of the MacBook Airs and definitely undercuts the other MacBook Pros. And it has the M3 chip in it, and the only compromise is you have a more dated design because there's no notch, there's no MagSafe, and it doesn't have the thin chassis that the new MacBook Airs do. That, I think, would go along with this lineup a lot better. Plus, it would have a fan, so it would have decent thermals and pretty great performance. It would just have the more limited I/O than what we're used to. But honestly, I think that would make more sense in the lineup, and 9to5Mac didn't explicitly say that this next 13-inch MacBook Pro was going to have the touch bar. So I think that would be the best way to still have a $1,000 entry point in the lineup, and that sounds a bit more believable to me, recycling an old design and selling it at a discount rather than just deducting $200 from the M3 MacBook Air, which is what a lot of people are saying. Well, now that the M1 Air is gone, we can lower the price of the M3 Air. No, it's not that simple. Mr. Timmy's gonna want his margins. So that's how I would like to see the MacBook lineup go, but most likely, congratulations, I guess, if you're a diehard Touch Bar fan. There could be an M3 chip version later this year. And on top of all of that, before we get these new MacBooks, we should be getting a site refresh or some kind of announcement for the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, which is rumored to use the M2 Ultra. And it will likely be a massive disappointment because the design will be the same and it won't be as modular as before. It'll just be one of those weird throw a chip in it and call it a day moves by Tim. So what do you guys think of that updated lineup? Is 5 MacBooks too complicated? Is 6 MacBooks not complicated enough? Do you want more options? Do we still want the 12-inch MacBook to come back? All that stuff, let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you in the next one.